Welcome to Lifeness with Logan Hall. It's life, it's business, it's Lifeness. Live from the StriveVenta.com studios, here's Logan Hall.
All right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. It's Lifeness. It's life. It is business. It's Lifeness. Thank you for listening, guys. Again, to remind you, if you're not listening to us on the app on iTunes, go to iTunes, simply type in Lifeness. Boom, right on your phone. Much easier to listen to in the past. One touch, you can listen to any of the past shows or today's show, which, is coming live to you 12:30 p.m. every Thursday, 12:30 here from our StriveVenta.com studios here in Tempe. We got a great show. We got someone that I really love, and I mean that in a few different ways. This is a family member, a friend, a really, really good person. This is my cousin Brandon, who's a police officer for Gilbert, proudly serves our community out in the East Valley. This is his wife, Diana Wilson. She's an amazing woman. Welcome, Diana. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome. So, Diana, the name of your company is Hope Group Arizona, right?
Yes, Hope Group. Mm-hmm.
And their website's hopegroupaz.com. And Hope Group, well, what does that mean? Hope can mean a lot of different things. And what we're specifically going to be talking about and what Diana specializes in and her company specializes in is childhood behavioral problems and early detection and prevention and how to improve some of these symptoms and how you get through this. So this is more of a serious show today because it's a very serious topic. I've got a baby out there. You guys know that I've got an 18-month-old Avonlea, and when you're a parent and when you're having the baby and you're going through all of the ultrasounds and all the checkups, you're just so concerned, hoping that it's got 10 fingers, 10 toes, and that everything physically is going to be good and hopefully mentally as well. And I think more so during that, you're not really thinking about that mental side because it's the physical side. Are they growing? Are they the size they need to be? Are all the organs developing? Is everything looking good from there? Because correct me if I'm wrong, Diana, there are some tests that they can do while the baby's in the womb to test for some of the mental disorders, right? The genetical stuff, right?
If it's a genetic condition, they can test it usually through a battery of tests during pregnancy. But for some of the neurological disorders and some of the other SMI or mental illness, they actually can't. We don't see them until the individual starts interacting with the environment, and then we're able to say, hey, something's not right here. So
it's not always, hey, we have the baby, all the ultrasounds are good, we got a perfectly healthy baby from head to toe, mentally, physically. That's not really how it works in the world of the mental side of it, with the neurological implications that come with when you come out and you start developing your brain and the chromosomes and the wires lining up and everything firing on all cylinders. And so you can't necessarily recognize or detect it pre-birth, but after birth, you've got a child. How do you recognize something like this, Diana? When do you recognize something like this? Are there symptoms that you see, or there behavioral traits, or you just all of a sudden recognize something's maybe not right? How do you know that maybe we should go talk to a specialist and get some tests done?
There's a lot of considerations and research going on right now around early detection, and it starts as early as like 6 to 9 months when kids should be pretty skilled in eye gaze and eye contact. A lot of the social emotional markers actually start between 9 and 12 months, where they should have a lot more of the joint attention with known caregivers and maybe caregivers that aren't known, but that may be silly or that may be able to catch their attention. But really, the research around that is kind of new, and there's kind of a gap between that research and those findings coming out and what's actually being practiced with the pediatricians. And so we're finding that here in Arizona, the average age of detecting a neurological disorder like autism specifically, which is the predominant one that we see, is about 4.5 years old.
I remember you telling me that when we were talking about, I've got a close friend who's got a daughter who's got some autism, and it's been a couple years, and I'd reached out to you, and you said, right around that 4.5-year-old age is where you really can say, okay, developmental-wise, I think that there may be some things that aren't firing all cylinders. So, but you can detect it as early as 6 to 9 months, like you said, the recognition, the eye concentration, things like that.
Yeah, and it can be diagnosed. I mean, we look at the symptoms prior to the age of 3. We have children being diagnosed and making it through the service process as early as 18, 19, 20 months old. So the Board of Pediatrics recommends that pediatricians start screening for these disorders at about 18 months old. We're finding that that's not a universal practice, especially in the rural communities, which is a new project that I've kind of taken on, that I'm working with the Phoenix Children's Hospital and their developmental pediatricians on. And we're really pushing
to reach out to the more rural areas, right? If you don't live in Phoenix and you don't have PCH down the road or one of the local hospitals, you live in, let's call it Forest Lakes, Arizona, maybe, or somewhere up in the White Mountains, and you've got Payson Regional Medical Center and you got Sholo Hospital or whatever it is. Though these, I'm going to say, routines or regular things that go on in bigger cities aren't reaching out to those rural. So that's something you guys are working on to try to get that knowledge out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And training the pediatricians, because like I said, they're the ones that are going to be able to guide the families and detect it as soon as possible. They're going to be the ones that see the kids more frequently, and they need to be screening for those disorders as early as possible, because early detection then leads to early intervention, and that is very critical for these children and their outcomes.
Very critical in any type of illness, early detection, because now you can start putting the things in place to prevent, and whether it's medicines or treatments or physical therapy or any of these sorts of things to kind of get ahead of when it's actually going to take place. So experimental behavior analysis, right? Is that something that you guys are doing?
So our science started with experimental behavior analysis. So years and years ago when there was the interest to actually start looking at how organisms interact in the environment. And over time, it's kind of morphed itself into what we consider applied behavior analysis. So we're looking at, again, how organisms and specifically humans interact in the environment. And by doing that, we're able to identify some pretty key markers in treatment for us to treat autism and teach individuals how to navigate their world. And if we can get in before the age of 7, so if we get in super early, we still have that time where the brain's still developing. So if we can teach them to navigate their world using our science, it's going to be something that's instilled in their brain because of the way the brain development works.
And so this is different than in the past. I mean, the standard treatments for this would be what? That, you're in a special class at school and things are kind of contoured to your disabilities. But this experimental and applied behavior analysis, this early detection and digging in a little bit deeper, not waiting until that child is past age 7 to really recognize this. I think that's really the key takeaway of this first segment is the early detection, right?
Absolutely. The earlier we can get in, the quicker we can treat, the better the results, because, again, we're using science to our side. So if development is already happening and we can kind of come in and intervene at that stage, we can follow developmental trajectory and get them close to their peers during the time that our brain's growing the most.
And so this isn't just autism. This can be personality disorders, bipolar, Down syndrome, any other mental disabilities, right? I mean, early detection is key.
Yeah, and definitely what we find with a lot of mental illness is by the time people reach out for treatment, the behaviors have been kind of reinforced and strengthened over time. And so once they are identified, making sure that we're able to get adequate support for the behaviors into the home and the training to the families so that we're moving them in the right direction before we strengthen those behaviors. It happens so quickly and it happens so inadvertently we don't even realize it's happening, and the next thing you know, we're stuck.
And it's too late to have that learning curve not too late, excuse me. It's later on than you would like to get to that point. And the early detection is key. I think that's really where it comes, you guys. We're talking with Diana Wilson with Hope Group Arizona about early detection of child mental behavioral disorders. Stay tuned after this short break. We're going to talk about what are those early indicators and signals? What do you catch up on? And then what do you do once you recognize some of these? What's my next step? Who do I contact? How do we get it going? Stay tuned. Thanks for listening to Lifeness. Hey guys, I'm here with a good friend of mine, John St. George, owner of Phoenix Carpet Water Restoration, home of the Spot Crew. John, tell us a little bit about your company.
Thanks, Logan. We are a locally owned carpet, tile, upholstery, and oriental rug cleaning company here in the Valley. We're happy to celebrate our 5-year anniversary, and we're giving 25% off to all new customers to call in at 602-319-8446.
So that phone number again, 602-319-8446, 602-319-8446. Call my buddy John for a free estimate today. Tell him Logan sent you. There's that rock and roll. Rock. All right, you guys, we are back here with Diana Wilson. She's my cousin. I just call her my cuz. Really good person. In the first segment, we were kind of just talking about childhood behavioral problems and some of the behavior analysis and the experimental and applied behavior analysis. And before we went to the break, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about now some of the signs. You're not on all alert, like looking for these signs, right? You're changing diapers and you're making sure they don't have rashes and that they're eating plenty of food. What are some of these signals or indicators? How do you recognize them? And then what do you do when you start to see some of these? Do you instantly reach out to your pediatrician? Do you get on webmd.com and Google stuff? Do you get in touch with hopegroupaz.com? What do you guys do? Well, or what do parents do?
We definitely caution the use of the internet because there is a lot of information out there and not all of it necessarily accurate. Most families detect the stereotypy or the repetitive behavior pretty quickly. You'll have a child that may flap their hands or that may spin in circles or not engage with their toys. But the signs that you could be looking for much earlier is, again, that ability to have that reciprocal smile and eye contact and those social components. And then the communication piece. Most kids will start babbling, between 3 and 6 months old, and then they start picking up on some words. And their first words are usually items that they like, where some children with a neurological disorder, they may not be delayed in their communication, but their choice of their first words might seem a little awkward because they're not things that they necessarily like. It might be a phrase from their favorite TV show or a specific character from maybe not a child show, but one that you would not expect a child to be interested in. But definitely the communication and the social piece are markers that are being missed. And once they're identified, contacting your pediatrician and making sure that you can advocate for your child, get them screened, request for them to be screened. And then right now, they send them most of the time to developmental pediatricians, but there's a lot of great groups that can help navigate that process for families.
So if you're a parent and you kind of start to see some of these, you're thinking, man, maybe, I don't know. Do you encourage like a parent to kind of keep a log of the behaviors and things that's going on so that when you go in and you do sit down with your pediatrician, that you can kind of have everything logged out that, hey, I noticed this day and this day. What do you kind of recommend as a parent as far as, all right, I think we need to make an appointment and go check this out, and maybe wrong, maybe right, but we need to take some sort of a step in this. How do you encourage a parent to kind of get prepared for that when they're going in to see their pediatrician that first time?
Usually we see a lot of the parents focusing in on things the child can't do. And children learn at different rates and they do different things, different points of their life. What we're trying to encourage families to do is really keep track of what they are doing. What sorts of things can they do? And that's actually going to help, especially when it comes to the developmental pediatricians. That's going to help them with identifying what's really going on. With autism, most of the good developmental pediatricians will look at other conditions that may be attributing and kind of rule those out in the process. And so the more they know about what your child can do, the more effective this process is going to be. And most parents don't think about that.
That's a great point. I'm glad that we brought this up, because you would think that you're going to go in and say, my child doesn't do this and doesn't do this and doesn't do this, but it's the contrary. Well, what do they do? How do they engage at what level? And then that pediatrician or whoever it may be starts ruling it out from that. So don't just put a list together of my child cannot talk, or my child cannot do this. What does your child do? Do they spin around in circles? Do they flap their hands kind of extravagantly all the time? Do they yell at the top of their lungs for no reason? Or are they, engaged when they're watching television shows or educational, or you're teaching them the ABCs or looking at flashcards? That's kind of the things that you want to be bringing to your pediatrician when you go and sit down with them, right?
Absolutely. And some of those kind of odd things, we get a lot of, when a pediatrician starts talking to families, they'll go through their questionnaire. Is your child babbling? Is your child doing this? Are they doing this? Those really odd patterns are ones that parents they may identify, but they don't necessarily relay effectively. And one we commonly see, most parents will see their child as being able to babble. And then when we ask them, okay, tell me what the babbling sounds like, they're like, well, it's a really